Here's the thing. Birds are real, and it's mean to say that they're not. We're back. Took a week off, but we are here.
We did take a week off. It felt wrong for us to do that, but
I know.
We did it anyway.
Gotta do what you gotta do. If you've forgotten, I'm Sam.
I'm Kesh.
Yeah. If this is your first time, welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to the other episodes.
A couple of listeners felt betrayed even. They told us they moved on to a different podcast during the last week.
I know, it's tough.
It's tragic.
But
that's showbiz, baby.
That's showbiz, baby. The real ones, you're still here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and we're all about the real ones here on Birds Are Real.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this first part, if you didn't listen to the last episode, where we talk about the birds we've seen over the past week, or in this case 2 weeks, calling it the field notes section. So field notes, Kesh, lay down a bar.
Field note bar. Well, it's been a couple of weeks, so we got a few sessions of birding in. We both went to Hines. I feel like a broken record saying that.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago. Saw some American coots, which were very nice.
Yeah, loved the coots. I've been so excited for them for months and months.
Not a duck.
Not a duck.
Duck-like.
Duck-like. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
We have some pictures that'll probably be on at least on my Instagram by now.
Yeah, I'm saving one for maybe Valentine's Day. I have a couple of coots looking into each other's eyes, so
nice.
Stay tuned for that. But yeah, the coots are really cool. We're seeing a lot more raptors as well, a lot of raptor activity.
Yeah, pretty consistent northern harrier at Hines.
There's one spot above the marsh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very cool, because they kind of look like a cross between a hawk and an owl.
Yeah, looking straight at you, like it looks like a skinny owl, kind of. Yeah, it's really cool. I think we mentioned this in maybe earlier, but compared to some other raptors, they like hover low and they kind of bank and like, so they're kind of slow moving, a little easier to get shots of. Yeah, no, they're really cool.
Very cool. And I was very excited when we went to Hines because I found for the first time a lifer that I had convinced myself did not exist, which is the cedar waxwing, which if you haven't seen one, you probably have. Everyone in the world has seen one of these except for me. But they're like kind of like cardinals, same sort of like body shape, same sort of crest shape, but like if you made a cardinal 75% cooler.
Yeah. I used the cedar waxwing's plumage to make my ultimate bird in an earlier episode. So yeah, its plumage is really cool, and I've only seen a cedar waxwing or a group of cedar waxwings twice, and they've both been in like large groups, which we also saw. So maybe that's just a thing they do.
I think so. There were like probably upwards of 20 of them.
Yeah.
I managed to get like 2 pictures of them, and then they all flew off.
They did all fly off. I was like, why?
They're like okay pictures, but I'm happy because I really wanted to see that bird.
Yeah. I feel like if you didn't get a picture, you still somehow wouldn't have believed you saw a cedar waxwing.
I know.
You needed that proof.
I did.
Yeah, so that was really cool too. Then last week, I went to John Hines again. Didn't see too many things other than some more raptors. Saw what seemed to be a mother red-shouldered hawk with a juvenile male red-shouldered hawk.
Nice.
So that was really cool. They were just chilling. Saw the northern harriers again. Heard many a belted kingfisher. Could not spot one or take a nice pic of one. Yeah, not super eventful. I did realize I do need to get some like fingerless gloves or something because my hands were getting pretty cold because we were out there really early and it's pretty chilly now.
Fingerless gloves are so sick, not just because they make you look like Rocky Balboa, but also because they're really good for photography. Because you do want your fingertips free. It's really hard to like adjust settings or honestly even press that button without your fingertip. But the fingerless glove aspect is amazing, especially if you get the ones that convert into mittens.
Yeah, because like I was with some other birders at the Marsh Boardwalk. We were all waiting for some action with these northern harriers. One of them was really selling the full glove with like the tactile like fingertip grip. I just feel like I wouldn't like that. Like it's not gonna feel the same when your finger's on the shutter. It's not gonna feel the same when you're trying to focus or anything. You know. Maybe if you get used to it, it's okay. But I feel like for now, I want like my actual fingertip available.
No, I would definitely say go for fingerless gloves. I have a pair that I got for like $5 like 10 years ago that I just keep wearing. Speaking of Rocky, I did not go birding this past weekend because I participated in the Rocky Run in Philadelphia, which was a 5K race that in the movie Rocky runs this route. In theory, I don't think it's actually that route, but it ends at the art museum.
Do you go up the steps?
No, you do not go up
You
the
do not
steps,
go up
which
the
is
steps,
nice.
okay.
So about like 45 minutes after the race started, they had a little ceremony to honor like the people who finished in first, second, and third for each age group.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished before that ceremony started. So
Nice.
Yeah. Producer Richelle did it with me and then actually ran another 10 miles and did a half marathon. So congratulations, Richelle.
Yeah, I did not do any running this weekend.
I envy you. I do not like to run.
Sneak peek to a field note for next episode. We're planning to go to Bombay Hook in Smyrna, Delaware this weekend, hoping to see some American avocets.
Yeah, we're hoping. There's been a couple sighted in the last week or so. So if we're lucky, it seems like it's a big place. So there's a lot of places to look. We're going to see a lot of birds regardless. We're hoping an avocet is there.
Maybe even a sandhill crane.
Sandhill crane.
Definitely a lot
amazing.
of ducks at least.
Lots of ducks. We'll see some good ducks. Yeah, stay tuned for that. Hopefully some good pictures. Seems like we can get pretty close to the water, so some nice eye-level pictures.
Yeah, so I think now's a good time to move on to the hoot topics that we have for today. Both hoot topics given to us by Nick.
Thank you, Nick. We got a list of really good questions, so we're going to answer a couple of them maybe an episode or two from now, too.
Yeah. So the first question is, do I really have to go birding at sunrise? How big of a difference does it make versus, say, 9 a.m.?
Yeah. So the short answer that I have to this is yes. But the long answer is, like with most things, it does depend.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
This time of year especially, I think, when we're mostly focused on things like ducks and raptors, later in the day is totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of raptors aren't going to be super active until maybe like 8 or 9 a.m. Later in the morning. Ducks, too, they're going to be pretty active most of the day, at least just floating there. Whereas when we were going out in the summer, and also around when we started this podcast, it was pretty important for us to get there when the sun was rising. That's when all the songbirds were flying around. It's also when all of the herons and egrets were kind of coming out of their sleep, out of their roosts, and like going to the water for the first time.
Yeah.
So it was pretty magical then, like getting there right at sunrise, seeing all these birds fly out, like kind of all at once.
Mm-hmm.
But lately it's been kind of like a little slower to start, and then it'll pick up as the day progresses.
I agree with that. I think important in the summer, like you said, to get out early because of the bird activity, the bird behavior, but also because it got really hot really fast.
So hot.
If you wanted to be there out for more than like a couple hours or even like an hour and a half, you wanted to get there as early as possible because it just got really hot and bright. Less of an issue now.
Yep.
So I think that helps with, being able to go out a little later and stay out for a little longer.
Yeah, I would say definitely invest in a really nice shady hat. Kesh has this amazing hat that is so shady. I'm really jealous.
Just got it on Amazon.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're going to go out, especially later in the day, even when it's cold out, honestly, I feel like people kind of forget to protect themselves from the sun when it's cold out, but get a really nice hat.
Yeah. Main reason I put the hat on is so I don't have to, or I feel like I don't have to put on sunscreen as much. And like I know in previous episodes we were like, you gotta go out, right at sunrise for like best possible experience. And I still think that is true if you want like the best experience. But we're photographers as well. We really, really value that golden hour light, like in the first hour of sunrise and the last hour before sunset. But if you're not into that, that's okay. Yeah. And you don't have to get there right at sunrise. That's like a big perk for us, I feel like.
Yeah, I think so. Any birding is better than no birding, basically.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So if like you can't get yourself up at the crack of dawn, but you still want to go birding, like yeah, go birding. That's fine. You're gonna see some birds, and that's better than just saying, "Oh no, I missed sunrise. I'm not gonna go out today."
Yeah, I think that's a good point because there's definitely been a day where I woke up, and then like I'm a little slow to get ready. I'm still eating breakfast, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna like miss half of golden hour. I'll be like there like half an hour past sunrise. Maybe I shouldn't go. No, I'm still gonna go. Like you should go. Like you still enjoy birding for the whole aspect of it. I think another perk of getting out there super early that we didn't mention yet was it's kind of nice being the first people there.
So nice.
It's just you and the birds, and maybe like one other person that got there super early. It's not that when people are out there they're loud. They are most of the time they are birders, so they know to stay quiet and everything. But I don't know. There's something just nice about being first one there, really quiet.
It does feel very nice just to kind of be alone and like at one with the birds, I feel like. Which it can also double for the afternoon for sunset. There's often more people at sunset than sunrise, but if you have the opportunity to stay out and kind of watch the light get dimmer with the birds at somewhere like a John Hines or just somewhere where there are birds, especially like marshlands, I feel like you get some really cool things. Night herons I've seen pretty consistently. Green herons, peeps when it was peep season right at sunset. I only went a couple times at sunset, so that was a pretty good deal too.
Yeah, so to summarize, like, you don't have to go at sunrise. There are a lot of benefits too. One of the main benefits for us being the photography aspect. But if that's not you, then, you know, like Sam said, any birding is better than no birding.
Yep.
So
yeah, just go out, look at birds. That's all you gotta do. Next question is, do you plan on bringing any guests on the podcast? And then also, what is your ideal guest?
Or like who your dream guest would be.
Who is your dream guest?
Yeah.
We do actually have some plans in the works, pretty preliminary, but I have a friend who works in environmental science. I've reached out. He's potentially interested about being on the podcast. Lives out of state, so we'd have to figure out how to record remotely, which I don't know how to do, but I assume we can figure it out because a lot of people do that. I think that would be a good guest. We've had people reach out who are interested in being guests on the pod.
Just like fans of the podcast, yeah.
And that's something that I think we would be really interested if we can figure out a good way to do it. Right now, just for a behind-the-scenes peek, we have one microphone that has a setting where it'll pick up sound from either side of it. So we just sit directly across from each other and talk into this one microphone.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever made that clear. I think some of my friends who were listening thought that like we recorded like from our own apartments, and but no, yeah, we're here live in the flesh.
I don't know if you all remembered or if you listened to our episode where producer Richelle was on, the All Hoot Topics episode, and we were trying to record 3 people at once. That was probably our worst sounding episode.
Yeah,
in
we
terms
really
of sound
had to
quality.
Yeah, we really had to like swivel the microphone, and then like, you know, if it wasn't in the exact same spot, it would cause like a different volume issue or whatever. Yeah, we made it work though.
It worked out, but there are definitely some things to work out in order to make that more consistent.
Yeah, and I think in theory it would be nice to have some local birders on the podcast, because they are like super knowledgeable, a lot more knowledgeable than us.
So much more knowledgeable than us.
And they have a lot of wisdom to impart. It does, like, we haven't been super outgoing with spreading the gospel of our podcast. Yeah, it's because like, what do? You're like, hey, I just started, or like, you know, I'm a new birder. I have a podcast. You want to listen to it? Like, it makes you sound like I don't know. Like
a lot of these people have been out here for like 30 years, like birding. We ask them questions. They're like, this is the stupidest question I've ever heard, but I'm still going to answer because I'm nice. Like, they're not going to want to listen to our podcast, I feel like. So I feel weird asking them to be a guest on the podcast.
Or just like, I feel weird just like, even like mention like, hey, we have a podcast.
I know, yeah.
Like, you know, as we said before, a lot of the birders are older than us, which I think kind of plays a role. Like, you know, I feel like birders who are more similar to us in age would be more receptive to that. I think that's less awkward, but I don't know. I feel like older people may not have an interest in listening to our podcast, but I'm not sure. But I think in time, it would be cool to have some of them on, because they do. I love talking to them when I'm out, and they have a lot of cool stuff that you know to share.
Definitely, yeah. It would be good. We'll get over our fears at some point. Maybe not.
Yeah, maybe you guys can spread the word so we don't have to.
Yeah, tell people to be guests on our podcast and to email us incessantly about wanting to be guests.
Yeah.
Speaking of emails, if you have ideas for Hoot topics, quick little topics you want us to tackle at the beginning of episodes, questions you want answered, send them in. birdsarereal.pod@gmail.com.
And then one more plug, a recommendation for a nickname for our main topic.
Yeah.
We're just calling it the main topic. I think it's fine as it is. Like, if that's how it has to be, but I don't know. Field Notes came out of nowhere. I really like that. Hoot Topics came out of... Closing Caw came out of nowhere. Caw. That's really good.
We got some creative, wonderful people who listen to this podcast. The best in the business, our listeners are. So let us know. Do our work for us. We don't get paid for this.
Nope.
Speaking of the main topic, we're about to get into it. So, Kesh, I have a very important question for you. Have you ever seen a celebrity?
Yes.
Yes, just like out and about, like in person. Who?
I mean, I've been to like a sports game before.
Right, yeah. No, I mean, like, I've seen like, you know, like sports players at sports games, like when they're supposed to be where they are.
That's true. Just like out in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think.
We do live in a pretty major city, so like I kind of felt like maybe I'd see some. I did think like a year ago that I saw Bryce Harper running through my neighborhood.
Yeah.
But upon like further reflection, I don't think Bryce Harper was running around at 1 p.m. in Fishtown.
Probably not.
On a game day.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm trying to think. I can't really think. Then again, I am like notoriously bad at just like recognizing actors and actresses, so maybe, but I just probably didn't recognize them.
Yeah.
Short answer, no.
No. I don't think I have, other than not Bryce Harper. Mm. But you know what? I actually have seen one other celebrity in my life.
Oh, yeah?
Yep. At the beginning of 2019 in New York City, which that is a place that's more likely for you to see a celebrity than in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
But to the surprise of no one listening to this podcast, the celebrity I'm talking about is not a human. It's a bird.
Whoa.
Yeah, talking about a celebrity bird. I'll get into that specific encounter a little later, but I do want to talk about this phenomenon of bird celebrities, mm-hmm. right? Because it's one of the most unexpected aspects of birding, at least for me, that I discovered when I started. Before all of that, do you have any famous birds you can think of, even if they're fictional?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of some famous birds in like actual birding, like real life birding. I don't exactly know what you mean by celebrity. I'm eager to find out. Mm-hmm. Would you consider the painted bunting?
Oh, well, that's very interesting you say that.
Okay.
I think what we're going to have to do is come up with a specific criteria and figure out if the painted bunting fits.
In my mind, it's a celebrity bird would be like something that stands out for one reason or another, mm-hmm. compared to like, your regular resident birds, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. We have heard from some listeners, specifically listeners that do currently or have previously lived in Minnesota, mm-hmm. about maybe something you might consider a celebrity bird. This gigantic loon statue that just got built in the Twin Cities.
Mm-hmm. Outside of the Minnesota
FC United Stadium. Then maybe that counts as a celebrity bird. We'll go over the definition a little later, at least our made-up definition. But let us know if you think this counts. I looked it up and saw that it's called The Calling. Like, that's the name of the statue.
It's kind of cool.
It's cool.
Sounds like it could be like the name of a horror movie series.
Yeah, exactly. The Calling. It probably is.
No, it's The Conjuring.
Oh. Or The Ring.
Or The Haunting in Connecticut.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Minnesota people, let us know. Does it also have like a name, like a nickname? Like, do you call it Phil? I don't know. Do you call it The Calling? You say, oh, let's go look at The Calling, and then go look at this loon statue?
Why do they call it The Calling?
It's just like, a work of art has like a name, like,
okay, but it's not. It doesn't have anything. It's not like a group of loons is called The Calling or anything like that.
Don't believe so. Okay. Not to my knowledge. But yeah, let us know. But I think kind of on that vein, there are a lot of region-specific famous birds. Like you mentioned, the painted bunting in Philly. But also, earlier this year, there was the juvenile yellow-crowned night heron at John Hines. And in our Philadelphia bird Discord, people were kind of going nuts over this thing. They were definitely really excited, commenting mm-hmm. on like where it was, what it was doing, if they saw it that day, stuff like that.
I kind of like the language because as you get accustomed to like how people talk about birds and everything, you'll notice there's a certain language that people use. I always like when they say like, oh, the juvenile yellow-crowned night heron continues. Yeah, like it sounds so mysterious. They're just like, they usually hang out in like a specific area, right? So the first person who like cites it that day will be like, night heron continues at mm-hmm. I don't know. I just like the way they say that.
I agree. And I think that does kind of lend to maybe the celebrity aspect. So I think now is a good time to maybe set some parameters of what we're considering a celebrity bird to be, right? Mm-hmm. I think for a bird to be a celebrity, it needs to stay in one general place, maybe like John Hines, for example, for an extended period of time, at least enough time for word to spread about it and for people to visit those places with the specific hope of seeing that bird. Okay. Right? So over the course of a couple days, in the case of our yellow-crowned night heron, people post in the Discord, word is being spread about it, and we actually did go with kind of the intent of seeing that bird. Yeah. Right? In this case also, I would say the barred owl that we saw at Cape May, I think would not count because it was only there for a couple hours. We had no way of knowing before we went that we could possibly see this bird. It was just more so people were like, hey, there's a barred owl here, and we went and then saw it while we were there, right?
Yeah, like we didn't go to Cape May with the intent of seeing a barred owl.
Yeah,
right?
and kind of on the barred owl front, where we happened to see it, and we probably walked by a bunch of other barred owls on the way. I think visibility is key. Kind of like what you mentioned with the painted bunting, right?
Stands out.
It stands out. It has to stand out. And the birds don't necessarily need to be rare to the area to be celebrities. We'll see that a little later. It does help if they are. But they do need to stand out from what an average person might see on a typical day.
Like a gull can never be, like a seagull.
Probably
can
not.
never be a celebrity bird.
There are some infamous seagulls. I used to work at the Mystic Aquarium at the snack bar, and there was this one gull that would hang out, and anytime someone bought food and brought it out from the snack bar, it would dive bomb them and steal the food. And then they would turn to me and complain, like, hey, this gull just stole my food. And I'd say, I'm so sorry. I'm, like, literally not allowed to give you more food. That was a horrible job.
It's a local celebrity, I guess. There.
Yeah.
I guess celebrity doesn't necessarily have a positive connotation.
No, not necessarily. So maybe that counts. I don't know. We'll get into that, right? But I would say raptors are probably the most frequent kind of celebrity bird that we see because they do easily stand out. They're massive compared to other birds, right? Yeah. A lot of times they'll have a pretty notable home base that they'll fly back to consistently. You know, while we're out, we see songbirds. They're kind of flittering from tree to tree, and then after you lose it, you're probably not going to see it again.
Yeah.
Whereas a raptor, it'll kind of be sitting in a tree most of the time, and maybe it'll do a circle, maybe it'll like dive to try and catch something. It'll oftentimes return to that same tree. Yeah.
It kind of like, it's like kind of walking down the red carpet, you know, it's showing itself off. And you know
then,
it's there. Yeah.
And then it's back to its limo. But its limo in this case is stationary.
Yeah. I think the bald eagle, you know, I feel like in most people's minds, a celebrity, I mean, like, you know, USA, whatever. But I was like super excited to see a bald eagle, like first couple times I went birding, I was like, wow, I've never seen a bald eagle. It's really cool. But now it's like a super common sight for us. Exactly. I mean, it's still cool every time.
But so celebrity birds, as I'm defining them, don't have to be raptors or even large birds. Like you mentioned before, they just kind of need to stand out. One way a small bird can do that is with color, like in the case of the painted bunting. I think maybe throughout this episode we can decide if it does count as a celebrity bird. I'm pretty sure it was there for more than one day, but this was you know, months ago at the beginning of the year, so I don't quite remember, but I do know people were talking about going to look for it specifically. I was talking about it and I never did. But on that note, the painted bunting introduces what I think is the most interesting part of this whole celebrity thing as it pertains to birds. And that's the way that people communicate about them, right? The way that the information is disseminated. The word needs to be able to spread, right? Like I mentioned with the first factor.
Yeah.
But the word also needs to actually be spread. So not only does it need to be able to have the time to do it, people have to be doing it, right? People need to talk about it.
It needs to have the hype.
Yeah, there needs to be some hype, right? Yeah. This can be just word of mouth. I think you mentioned during an earlier episode that you knew about the painted bunting because I told you about it.
Right, exactly.
You weren't in the birding Discord at that time. But these days, the biggest way people communicate about birds, at least where we are, is with social media, and specifically here, Discord. We've mentioned our Discord a few times on the pod, but for those who don't know, I do kind of want to dive into what Discord is. So Discord, how it works is there are like servers about specific topics. Birds, for instance, video games is a huge one.
Like different shows. It could be a server on like any topic, really.
If you're a fan of a certain thing, there's probably a Discord server that someone has made about that. The person who makes the server can then also make sub-channels in the server, which have more specific topics.
Yeah, in the instance of our bird Discord, we have different channels based on location. And, you know, you can go through every channel. But, you know, we typically look at the Philadelphia channel because that's what's relevant to us. But then there's a Chester County channel, there's a Bucks County channel, there's a, you know, outside of Philly, like different parts of Pennsylvania channels. The entire server is in general for birders in Pennsylvania, but you go into the channels that are applicable to you.
And any user can kind of comment in basically any of the channels. There are some more restricted channels, but in general, you can comment in every channel. You can make a a post, make a thread, anything like that. Kind of like a message board.
And there are also some other specific channels. Like there's a channel where you can just post bird photos, and people are going to be like, "Hey, nice photo.
Yeah.
That's great." There's a channel for ID help where, mainly for birds, like kind of the peeps that are hard to identify. Maybe I didn't get like the super good pic, so I'll post it, and then the experts in there will use their deductive reasoning skills to like come up with the best possible answer.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. There's channels where you can like discuss gear, like spotting scopes, photography gear. Yeah, it's just a super helpful overall. Just like a community.
Exactly.
Help giving out information to each other. Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things that kind of separates Discord from maybe other social media platforms is, in this case, you don't need to be like friends. Like you have to be on Facebook or like follow them like on Twitter or Instagram in order to see like the content or to communicate with them. It's all just you're both interested in this subject. So you are in this one overarching message board and you're just kind of talking to random people about this thing. So like in Cape May, we heard about the barred owl because a person that we didn't know, that we weren't friends with, just came up to us and said, "Hey, I just saw this barred owl. Did you know about it?" So then we told other people, "Hey, we just saw this barred owl. Did you know about it?" And then they told other people, right? And so word kind of spread that way. Discord operates sort of in a similar way, but a little more on a larger scale. So someone can comment, "Hey, I just saw this barred owl. Did you know about it?" And then everyone can see that and go to it.
And it's really cool. We mentioned the rare bird alerts in a previous episode, but those are also really helpful in terms of like spreading the word about a specific bird, because a lot of these people do also post like GPS coordinates, like, "Hey, I saw this bird right here."
For me, I think that works out better because I do have a lot of like social anxiety. I prefer just being able to see the messages that someone else is posting and not even have to like respond to them, not have to acknowledge that I saw them, and just like go out and try to see that bird. But you are a lot better at going up to people and talking to them in person. So I don't know, do you think there's something lost when you're looking at stuff on Discord as opposed to talking to people?
No, totally not. I mean, like if you have a question, like definitely ask it. I don't think there's any judgment in the Discord. I think everyone's there to help, but totally okay to just be a fly on the wall, absorb the information as it comes. I think each way is a good way to approach things.
Yeah, no, and I do think this social media aspect really kind of makes these birds feel like celebrities rather than just like, "Hey, we're all out birding. Here's a cool thing you could go look at," right? And it's like you mentioned before, the way people like talk about it, the language they use. Like we're tracking their whereabouts and we're trying to get pictures of them like we're the paparazzi or like TMZ, you know what I mean?
True.
And then we're posting messages that are like, the yellow-crowned night heron was spotted smoking cigarettes with the gray catbird by the big boardwalk, kind of like funny, like this big figure is doing something very innocuous, but because they're famous, it's interesting, right? So in our case in Philly, it is Discord, but that is not the only social media site that can create bird celebrities, right? In fact, it's really Twitter that holds that crown. And that's because Twitter is the primary source of bird news for New York City, where all celebrities, as we know, are birthed.
You put me onto this Twitter account pretty recently. I do follow it now.
We're East Coasters, so we're ignoring Los Angeles. New York City is the hub of everything. And in New York, there are these Twitter accounts. They're called like Brooklyn Bird Alert, Queens Bird Alert. I think all the boroughs have their own one, but the main one is Manhattan.
Yeah.
The Manhattan Bird Alert, where they're going to post about all of the noteworthy birds that are in and around New York. And this is where a lot of our celebrities come from. And it's mostly because New York does have giant parks, including Central Park. So today I am going to be talking about 3 specific celebrity birds, all from New York City, all made famous from Twitter, and we're going to go in reverse chronological order. So we're going to start with Flaco, the Eurasian eagle owl.
I've heard a little about Flaco.
This is kind of one of the more interesting stories to me because it raises a lot of questions. There were a lot of discussions that happened specifically because of Flaco, and there isn't really an easy answer to them, as we'll kind of discover. But to start, if you do not know what a Eurasian eagle owl is, it's an owl from Europe and Asia that kind of looks like an eagle.
So it's a northern harrier?
Not quite. It looks more like an owl.
Nice.
It's got those like ear tufts that a great horned owl has. I think it's a little bigger than a great horned owl. But basically it's kind of like if you took a great horned owl and just put it into a photo editing software and turned the saturation sliders up really high. So it brings out a lot more of those like oranges and yellows in the feathers, right?
Nice.
As you might expect from the name, Flaco, the Eurasian eagle owl, was not native to North America, and he was actually born and raised in captivity in the Central Park Zoo. Okay, actually he was hatched in North Carolina and then shortly thereafter brought to the Central Park Zoo, but that's still not in Europe or Asia, so
Right.
it's fine. So he escaped from his enclosure after about 13 years. He was born in 2010, moved to Central Park later that year, and then was there until 2023. He escaped from his enclosure. Someone actually went out and cut the netting on his enclosure to intentionally try to let him out. We're assuming. I don't think the person was ever discovered who cut the net.
Yeah. But there was clear signs of the net like being cut with like a sharp
like
object.
a human like cut the net.
Okay.
But Flaco was not really used to flying, so he didn't like make a grand escape, exit, and like fly all the way back to Europe or anything, right? He just kind of stayed in Central Park, set up camp there, but he did leave his enclosure and went to like the main park. Zoo officials and New York birders, they noticed pretty much immediately, and Twitter kind of blew up, right?
Yeah, quick question. Did they know it was Flaco because he was like banded in a certain way, or like, there's only one Eurasian eagle owl in the area and we're missing one?
I think that was it. It was kind of a situation where it's like, hey, this is a Eurasian eagle owl, and then Central Park Zoo was like, oh, guess what? We lost a Eurasian eagle owl. So then at that point, they knew it was Flaco. According to the criteria we set earlier, Flaco checks all the boxes, right? He was this big, very noticeable bird that was really easy to find because he was kind of just sitting in this tree. He wasn't really flying around that much. He was a rare bird, and people were talking about him, like really talking about him. This was back when I was still on Twitter for a little bit, so I do remember some of it. So the big kind of thing was that the zoo was trying to recapture him, but they were failing. They were trying all these things. If I remember right, like they tried seducing him into a cage with, I think, the scent of a female eagle owl and even like the sounds of an eagle owl. I think at one point they might have even brought out an eagle owl, like a female eagle owl, to try and convince him to come back into the cage.
They would have fooled me.
Yeah, but he wasn't doing it. He wasn't having it. But in the meantime, while this was happening, there was kind of this debate breaking out, mainly on Twitter, about whether or not Flaco should actually be recaptured, right? I think a lot of people's initial responses would be like, no way, like Flaco should be free. He got out, he's a bird, let him fly, right? There were a lot of like hashtag free Flacos going on, but there were still at the same time a lot of people and even lots of animal rights proponents that were saying Flaco should actually be back in captivity. And that's because after 13 years, especially being born and raised in captivity, people were worried that he didn't really have a great ability to fly and wouldn't be able to find and hunt in order to sustain
he doesn't
himself.
have like he may not have the instincts to do that and stuff
Exactly.
anymore,
They're kind of worried about him being able to fend for himself, and that is an issue for a lot of like escaped or released animals. I mean, it is something to think about. So what people decided to do, like the zoo and conservation agencies and just general birders who were interested, they just like watched him around the clock, right? Watched him like a hawk, haha. And they decided if he was able to successfully hunt multiple times within this certain time frame, they would just leave him be, right? So that limit was approaching. People were live tweeting the whole thing, right? Like, oh, Flaco just swooped down, but he didn't get anything. Flaco's on day whatever and hasn't had any food. Uh-oh. And then just before the deadline hit, I remember it was very dramatic. Flaco caught a rat, right?
Word.
And ate it. And then he caught another one and another one. And people were convinced, like, oh, he's figured it out. He's pretty self-sustaining. The zoo did say, all right, we're going to back off. We're going to stop trying to capture you. Be free, Flaco. And as far as I could tell, which, again, to all of our impressionable listeners at home, I'm not a scientist. I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy who likes birds. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But I don't think that was the expected result. Like, Flaco was kind of pulling off a miracle. People really didn't think he was going to be able to hunt for himself. And afterwards, the conversations did keep happening, and mostly people were reporting on Flaco's whereabouts and how he was doing, because everyone was still kind of concerned, but he was doing well. And, I mean, people loved to see him, because
Yeah, I feel like this is definitely hitting the definition of a celebrity
I
bird.
think so.
Everyone's interested. Everyone's keeping tabs on him.
Yeah.
It's like a social media phenomenon.
He was like the big bird, you know? He was
Yeah.
Big Bird in New York at that time. And as we'll kind of see, there's always kind of one big bird, especially in like Manhattan, Central Park.
Yeah.
So after about a year, he did move from hanging out mostly in Central Park to hanging out in like the city in Manhattan. I think it was the Lower East Side. I don't know. I'm bad with neighborhoods, but then sadly in February of this year, he was found dead, and it seemed like he flew into a window.
Tragically, the case for a lot of different birds.
I know.
Yeah.
So then the conversations kind of started again at that point about, well, should they have let him free at all? You know, because he wasn't quite equipped to live in the city. They thought, right?
He was in
'Cause there were
captivity
these
his whole
buildings,
life.
right?
Yeah.
And this is where I say, like, there's not really a definitive answer, right? But I'll say this also. Flaco was 13 years old. The average age of a Eurasian eagle owl in the wild is about 15 to 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So he's pretty close to that. And he also was literally in Central Park for 13 years before any of this happened. And no one really cared or, like, noticed. Or it wasn't especially that notable when he was in captivity. But then he was free, and people really latched on to him. And people, I don't know, took a lot of inspiration from him, and they started having these important conversations about captured animals and whether or not, like, releasing them into the wild is good, or capturing them in the first place is good, you know, all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think those conversations would be happening on as large a scale without Flaco.
Yeah, I think it definitely, like you said, got the public going, discussing it. You got to wonder how the initial person, whoever got him out of captivity, felt seeing all this go down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I would love to hear, like, what the intention was and, like, what they were hoping for.
Yeah,
but
maybe it was like a inside job, a zookeeper or something.
It could have been. Yeah, Flaco was an inside job.
Heard it here first.
But yeah, so we'll keep moving on to our next celebrity bird, right?
Nice.
And the next celebrity bird I want to talk about is also an owl. In this case, though, it's an owl that's very common in North America. Also an owl that's very common on the podcast as of recent weeks. It's a barred owl.
Nice. Who cooks for you?
Who cooks for you? In this case, it's Barry the barred owl. That's who cooks for us. She was, by all accounts, just a typical barred owl, right? But I think she met that second criteria for being a celebrity that we laid out earlier, which is, even though maybe she wasn't rare, she was noticeable, which is rare for a barred owl to be, as we know.
Yes, they blend in very well.
Exactly, right? We know that we're probably passing hundreds in a year, maybe thousands in a year that we just don't notice because they're blending in so well. And that's what made Barry kind of so beloved, was she was this bird that everyone around there knew was kind of supposed to be there. Maybe they're hearing her at night, but almost no one has seen, right?
Is this still Central Park?
Central Park
okay,
also,
yeah.
Yep. But there's Barry, right? Just perching in a tree, kind of right in the heart of all Central Park activity, letting people walk around, letting dogs walk by, and just sitting there. It's kind of interesting. I feel like I get it. I get why people were so interested in this experience, because as we talked about, when we saw that barred owl in Cape May, it was kind of this, like, magical experience.
It really
right?
was, yeah.
Everyone was, like, hushed, and we were just kind of in there and just staring at this bird. It was literally just a bird, and it was sitting there. But it's so amazing because I think you don't get too many opportunities to just, like, be around an animal that is normally, like, really scared of you, right? And doesn't want to show itself around humans. But being around an animal that seems to be comfortable with us, that isn't flying away, that isn't scared, I feel like it makes us feel a bit more connected to nature, right? It makes us feel like we can interact with animals in a way that does let them feel comfortable, that doesn't just let them feel scared.
That's not, like, disruptive. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were, I don't know, really thankful to be able to see that and kind of remind them about, like, you know, that can happen, even with a bird that's as solitary and as shy as the barred owl. Barry was also kept tabs on by the Manhattan Bird Alert Twitter page.
And Barry was just like...
Just a barred owl?
Just a wild bird?
Just a wild bird,
okay.
Yep. No escaping from a zoo, just a wild barred owl.
So what stuck out about Barry in particular? Just the fact that it was, like, more out in the open than anything else? Okay.
Yeah, that even, like, you know, during the day when she was going to sleep, She would just hang out in a branch that was like really visible, where
Yeah.
people would kind of gather around and like take pictures, and she just didn't really care.
Cool.
This was in, I believe it was October of 2020. Went until about 2021 with Barry.
Oh, nice. That was like a staple sighting for a whole year.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you go to see Barry?
I didn't. This was like right during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I was in Colorado. I was seeing pictures, and I was like daydreaming, like, oh, I really want to go back and see Barry. But I mean, so okay, I am talking about her in the past tense, which means she also did die, kind of in a pretty sad way. I'm not trying to bum everyone out, I promise. There is some substance to be taken from this. And the circumstances, I believe, are still kind of unclear as to what happened. So I'm just going to talk about this briefly. I don't want to be wrong, but it seems like what happened was she might have been hit by a Central Park ranger driving one of those, like, truck, golf cart like things through the park.
And Barry was on the ground
at night. Yeah, Barry was like hunting or something and got hit. Birders on Twitter, especially, I was still on Twitter at this time too. They were mad. They were going off about how the Rangers are always driving way too fast, and that like they knew something like this was going to happen at some point. But like once again, we see if this were just a barred owl, like it's sad, but I wouldn't have gotten really any attention. But because it was Barry, this celebrity bird, like there were a lot of big important conversations that were happening as a result of that.
Like I'm sure Barry was like part of everyone's day. Like, you know, if you walked by there, or like at least on, you know, whenever you visited, like maybe given that Barry was there for a whole year, you expected to see her.
Yeah.
It was like a part of your like trip to go to Central Park.
They had like a public funeral. Literally hundreds of people went to this. It was pretty incredible. But yeah, people definitely loved Barry and miss Barry now. But Barry kind of did fill this void left by what I consider to be the biggest celebrity bird in New York. We've talked about a rare bird that escaped into New York. We've talked about a common bird that made herself seen in New York. But this last one is still kind of a mystery. No one really knows where this bird came from. No one knows where this bird went. This one does not end with a death. We do know one thing, and that's that, in my opinion, he was the biggest celebrity bird of the social media age. And I'm talking about the Mandarin duck.
Even as like a non-birder person at the time, I knew about the Mandarin duck.
Yeah.
It was huge.
TLDR, like if you don't know about the Mandarin duck, it's this very pretty duck. It is not native to North America, but it just randomly showed up in Central Park one day. There are a lot of little ponds in Central Park, and someone was like, hey, here's a Mandarin duck in Central Park. And it was awesome, right? I actually went to New York to see this duck. I didn't do that for the other birds like I mentioned here. It didn't have as catchy of a name as like Flaco or Barry. I think some people did call him Mandy, the Mandarin duck, but to most people it was just like the Mandarin duck, right? But yeah, I went to New York, middle of winter, really cold, had those fingerless gloves on. I walked around at like 6 a.m. until I found him. I did actually make a 7-minute long documentary about the Mandarin duck.
Wait, I haven't seen this documentary yet. That's crazy.
Well, I made it. I was a film major in college.
True.
This was my senior capstone project where I...
Oh, wait, maybe, now that you mention that, maybe I did see part of it, yeah.
I did it, like, my whole thing with it was I was making, like, a Ken Burns style documentary where I was treating it like a cryptid. Like, it was Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster or something. I rewatched it today. And it's pretty good.
Nice.
Pretty good.
Is it on YouTube?
It's like unlisted on YouTube. I think I'm gonna upload it to the Birds Are Real YouTube
you
page.
should.
So if that's something you're interested in, listeners at home, we're releasing this podcast on Monday. I think on Tuesday I'm gonna release this video. So give it a watch. The audio quality is much worse than what we have today, but it's pretty funny. I think it's pretty good. But yeah, in addition to me, like you mentioned, like even non-birders, everyone kind of went into a frenzy over this thing, right? Hundreds of people every day are posting pictures. They're going to Central Park to see this bird. People are making merchandise, right? Richelle and I both got each other Mandarin duck t-shirts for an anniversary that year.
And you didn't know?
We didn't know.
Yeah.
We both independently said, this is a gift we're going to get for each other. And there were like children's books being written about them. They were on talk shows, SNL. They were all talking about the Mandarin duck of Central Park. And it was good that I did go to see him when I did, because a couple weeks, maybe a month later, he disappeared, right? There were no reports about him on Twitter. There was this very, like, ominous tweet that was like, has anyone seen the Mandarin duck today? And then, like, the next day, like, No reports of the Mandarin duck since March 30th or whenever it was.
My like earliest memory of the Mandarin duck was like seeing it on Twitter. But like I thought like, and this was way before I was into like birds or birding at all. But like, I just like didn't think it looked real. I was like, this is like kind of like, I don't know. I just thought it was fake for some reason. Like someone edited it, or it was like a weird cross between things. I was like, this is not just like a regular bird out there, you know?
No, definitely. And I mean, I went to see it in person. I went and took pictures of it. And I look at my pictures and I'm like, oh, this is, what did I do? Like, I'm just so over edited. What happened to this? But that's just how the bird looks.
Yeah.
It's so bright and colorful, especially the white feathers in it kind of meld together in this very uncanny way where it looks like too smooth to be a bird. But
dang, well, I'm sad I wasn't into birding then. Seems like I may never see one again.
Yeah, I mean, he was just gone, right? People thought maybe he had migrated away and then he'd be back next fall. But then fall 2020 hit, no duck. Winter 2021, no duck. And it just never came back.
My initial thought was like maybe it was like, I mean, you know, there's a lot of pet trade in the U.S., legal or not. And I know like parrots are huge and like, or like parakeets or whatever, and cockatiels maybe.
Yeah.
And like bird pets, but I don't know. Maybe someone had a Mandarin duck around.
That is what people were saying, like on social media. That was their best guess because there were no like zoos that were saying like, hey, this is our escaped duck.
Yeah.
And the Mandarin duck was a bigger deal than even Flaco on Twitter at the time. So if there were like a zoo or something,
someone would have spoken up.
More above board, they would have spoken up. So people were thinking it was kind of just an exotic pet sort of thing that escaped. And I don't know, I think this mystery kind of lent itself to the celebrity of the duck, right? Because it did gain this air of like mystique. It kind of, people were treating it like a legend, especially when it left and just like never came back. You know, like, did it actually happen?
It's probably where your cryptid idea came from.
Exactly. Yeah, that was kind of the whole. Watch the video. It's pretty good. The timeline's much more clear in the video.
Nice.
But like, you know, depending on where you're listening to this from, you may be thinking, what's the big deal? Mandarin ducks are super common throughout Eastern Asia. If you're listening from Eastern Asia, shout out to you. But in Central Park in the United States, a Mandarin duck is not very common. So I think it was kind of especially great because it did give a lot of people, this opportunity to see this amazing, this beautiful bird that, like you said, it almost doesn't look real, that otherwise they probably never would have had a chance to see, maybe never even knew exist, you know? I think now we find ourselves at the end of our main topic. You may find yourself asking the question, who cares? Why did we just talk for so long about bird celebrities, right? Like, what does that even mean? I think there are some interesting lessons that we can distill from these 3 specific birds, right? We've talked about them a little bit already, but what it boils down to for me is this. Celebrity birds, these ones specifically, they caused a lot of excitement over birds in general, and it extends beyond the birding community. You said you had heard of the Mandarin duck. A lot of people heard of the Mandarin duck. A lot of people heard about Flaco. Barry, like, brought a whole community together. They had this, like, beautiful funeral, and it causes a lot of people to have care and compassion for birds, right? They think about this one famous bird that they really like, and then they start thinking about these other birds, right? And they start appreciating all the other birds that they see every day. So I have a little assignment for everyone listening to our gigantic Birds Are Real community. Find your community's celebrity bird, even if it's on a smaller scale, okay? Do you have a specific bird you're always seeing in your yard? I know my parents' backyard, there's this red-tailed hawk that it nests, you know, quite a few trees back. You can't really see it while it's nesting, but basically every day it'll get up, it'll scream, it'll do a couple circles, and then park back in its little nest. And to us, that guy's pretty famous, you know? I don't know, maybe you were out last weekend and you saw a cool bird. I would say go back again with a friend, see if you can find that same bird. Create some excitement about it, give it a name, observe it, think about its behavior, think about what it's doing. Like, how would you report this on Twitter? How would you report this on Discord? I don't know, and then tell someone about it. Tell us. You can email us. Tell us the names of your celebrity birds. Maybe we'll feature them on like a TikTok or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
You know, if you're somewhere where you haven't been able to find like a Discord server or a Twitter community. Maybe make your own. Get 2 or 3 friends together and say, hey, let's make this Discord. Let's tell people about birds that we're seeing, you know? I don't know. Maybe I'm getting kind of preachy here, but just go find a bird that makes you think, wow, birds are sick. Birds are great.
And yeah, like Sam said, it doesn't have to be like a huge phenomenon like Flaco, like Barry, or like the Mandarin duck. It can be like, you know, a little local celebrity. That counts too.
Yeah. Northern Harrier, I feel like that we've been seeing.
Yeah. Maybe even like a seasonal celebrity, the Northern Harrier here, because, you know, we're going to the Marsh Boardwalk. We're expecting to see some Harrier action.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that counts.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe there's a starling that hops around outside your window every morning. Maybe you think it's annoying. Give it a name. You're not going to think it's annoying anymore. You'll be excited when it comes and hops around, pecking at your window. Before we end, I do briefly think I should mention there is a huge name that I left off of the celebrity birds list, specifically the Central Park birds list. That's pale male, the red-tailed hawk. Pale space MALE. Name given because a birder saw a red-tailed hawk, a male red-tailed hawk that was slightly pale. Called him pale male. But there's way too much to go over with pale male during this episode, because he was famous in New York for like 32 years, like since the 90s, the early 90s. But there are a lot of books, some documentaries made about him. There's some like interesting legal battles that went on because of him. Pretty interesting stuff, honestly. I'll have to look more into it, but I would recommend everyone else, like, check out these books, check out these documentaries. I think they're just online. Pale male, the red-tailed hawk. I don't want the hardcore birders to get mad that I left out pale male, but
I mean, I haven't heard of pale male. I'll probably have to check it out.
Yeah.
I'll be on the lookout for some like local celebrities around here. Whenever a bird's popping off on the Discord or on Twitter or something, like, I'll think back to this episode and be like, wow.
Yeah, I think just like thinking about the way this information is disseminated, for me, that's like very interesting to me. I don't know.
I think that is cool. I think one thing we didn't mention was maybe eBird. Like, we're not super big eBird users, but I do feel like a lot of people follow eBird.
Yeah.
And use that as like a, hey, this bird is spotted here and we didn't expect it to be spotted here. And I don't know. That's just another way. I think a lot of birders find their like niche or like local celebrity birds.
Yeah, you can't get into like the quite as much like personality with that. You know, you can't like make captions, but definitely a lot of people use eBird, and eBird could be an entire other topic for us, I think, and it probably will be eventually once we get more used to it. But time to go to our closing caw section.
So, since we both got it wrong the last episode, I think the score is still 5-4.
I believe it's 5-4. Kesh is up.
All right. Here's my call that I picked out for Sam. Sounds kind of scary, isolated.
Yeah. Okay, so my initial guess is American bullfrog.
Classic bird call, the American bullfrog.
Yeah. Very interesting. Okay. This makes me think back to the Corvid episode a little bit.
Okay.
It's sounding to me a little like, obviously that's not the crow, it's not the raven. I'm trying to remember what the rook sounded like, and I feel like it was similar to that. I don't think this is a rook. So I'm thinking about something kind of Corvidy. Maybe I should also be thinking about something, I don't know, for some reason my mind is going to like pelican or something. I can imagine a pelican making a noise like that.
You want me to play it again?
Yeah, let's play it again. Like, it sounds demented, but it also sounds really familiar. Now I'm kind of thinking maybe it's a vulture of some sort. Boy, I don't know. I'm going to go with a turkey vulture.
Not a turkey vulture.
Okay.
It's a double-crested cormorant.
Oh, wow. Okay, I was closer with pelican.
You were in the area with pelican for sure.
Yeah, that's a great call. Wow.
Yeah, it's like very, I like how deep it is.
I know, yeah. Cool, okay, that was a good one.
Cool.
I'm never going to forget that as long as I live.
Nice.
Cormorant sounds like a frog. Good to know. All right, this one is mine.
I was getting a little like oink oink from a pig from that one.
A little piggy.
Yeah.
Like a piggy frog. Sounds
frog.
like a cormorant. Here's mine.
That sounds so familiar. That sounds like something I should know.
Mm-hmm.
Given the type of call it is, I'm thinking a smaller bird, maybe a warbler, maybe I don't know why mind is going to like a peewee maybe, but I don't think you'd give me a peewee. It's giving songy. I kind of want to go like warbler, maybe I'm trying to think of what other small birds there could be. My downfall was not thinking about sparrows last time, but I don't think it's a sparrow. It's not as chirpy as a sparrow. I don't know why I'm leaning towards like something like a finch. Play it one more time.
Okay.
Sounds like a super common bird, dude. I don't know, like a white-breasted nuthatch.
Close, honestly. Tufted titmouse.
Oh, that's what I guessed last episode. Damn. Okay.
A bird that I
Pulled the
heard-
rug under for me
I
on
know.
that one. That's a good one.
A bird I heard all the time growing up, like
Yeah.
every single morning year round.
Okay.
And a bird that I don't know if I've heard since I moved to Philadelphia.
Yeah, I thought maybe we heard some when we went to Pennypack Delaware.
Maybe. I think there were one or two there.
Yeah, that's foolish of me. I guessed that last episode. It was wrong. And then I didn't study up on its bird call. That's on me.
I'll know to study vultures for next time.
Oh, it sounded so familiar though. But yeah, definitely grew up with that
Yeah.
around where we grew up. Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool. Still
Still
5-4.
We're gonna turn it up next week.
Yeah,
We're gonna
I'll
study.
actually study.
Yeah,
for next
we're
time.
bunkering down.
Yeah.
We're gonna get it.
Thanks for tuning in.
Follow us on all our social medias. You know the drill by now. Email us questions if you have them. And yeah, go find a celebrity bird and let us know their name.
Yeah, would love to hear.
Take a picture if you can. But if you can't, draw a picture.